fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Several shots were fired as President Kennedy's motorcade passed through downtown Dallas.
None of us will ever forget this day. Yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world.
Can you get to say again, please? Houston, we've had a problem.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Welcome to the Hagmann Daily Show, weekdays 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And now your hosts, Joe Hagmann and Jon Robberson.
Hello and welcome to this Thursday, May 10th edition of the Hagmann Daily Show. We got a whole bunch to get into today, as well as we're going to be joined by Chance in a few minutes to talk about what's going on in Israel and Iran, as well as just a few minutes talking about his latest products on simplycleanfoods.net, our sponsor. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. We see that Israel has responded to the Iranian attacks. We have more clarification on what happened. Yesterday, we reported that there were a couple of Russians killed in airstrikes. That was incorrect. It appears that the first round of firings from the Iranians via Syria was done. 20 missiles, 4 of them were intercepted by the Iron Dome. The rest, according to reports, fell short. Now, Israel has responded, and it appears they have taken out at least 23 fighters with the strikes. Nearly all Iranian infrastructure in Syria has been, according to reports, has been destroyed. So we're going to talk about that. Also, got some interesting news on Michael Cohen, as well as a tweet I want to talk about here from CNN. After we talk to Chance, we can get into this. CNN issued this yesterday at 3:08 p.m. The Democrats' 2018 advantage is nearly gone, according to a new CNN poll. Remember the talk of the blue wave? Remember the talk of this, Democratic taking over of the House and Senate? Well, now even CNN is saying, well, that looks like our advantage is gone. And we're going to talk about what that means and what they are, saying with that tweet. Also on HagmannReport.com, make sure you check that. And not only the exclusive reports, but there's a tab on top in other news, and you can see all the curated pieces. Another piece of information we're going to cover today: Dinesh D'Souza, Rosie O'Donnell should be prosecuted like I was. We're going to play a clip of D'Souza from Fox and Friends this morning, talking about what he went through for doing the same exact thing that Rosie O'Donnell was just caught doing, and why she should be prosecuted. Also, Michael Aventetti, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, is in some hot water after leaking confidential banking information about Trump attorney Michael Cohen, but also about separate Michael Cohens who have no relation to the president's attorney, and what kind of trouble he's looking at, as the Treasury investigation shows that somebody leaked this information, committing up to 3 felonies while doing so. And this is, something that we see, the Mueller investigation, the Stormy Daniels, all of this stuff, this political witch hunt. And Pence made some comments today as well, and we're going to talk about other Michael Cohen reports. But John, it's great to be here today. We got a lot to get into. Oh, also, the continuation of the oil prices are increasing. Gas prices topping $4 in California, and the spike in oil prices, they say it could see its most volatile week, and with the highest increases just this week. And we've already seen massive increases not massive, but noticeable increases in the oil price per barrel. And that has translated to at least an extra 40-50 cents of gas just here where we live per gallon. So all things, U.S. and geopolitical we're going to get into today. But we're going to bring Chance on in just a few minutes, John.
Well, that sounds like a great plan, and greetings and God's blessings to all of our listeners. And as we check in today on Thursday, May 10th, and as per usual, the month is just flying by, and excellent choice on making that correction from our time together, Joe, last night on the Hagmann Report.
Yeah, you caught that.
We receive a ton of data from listeners and from all of our friends across the blogosphere and the various news platforms. And whereas the information was accurate to a degree, apparently where the confusion was, Joe, is last week, in fact, a week ago today, Thursday, May the 3rd, there were 2 Russian fighter pilots who unfortunately had an air accident. They went into the drink off the coast, and so there were 2 fatalities there, and I think that's where the confusion came in. So there were 2 Russian fatalities, but they were not KIAs out of the Syrian regional conflict over the past week. So half accurate, half not. And of course, Joe, we're going to remain committed to correcting these type things whenever we need to. In addition to that, I took the advice of I think it was Pastor Langford last night who suggested that, it may be straight out of Grandma's Book of Wisdom, but go top off your tank, and I did so last night, and we are seeing a significant increase in prices at the pump, and of course that's going to be nationwide. And just topping off the vehicle was $43 last night, nice. Which is noticeably higher than it was just a month or two ago. And the last thing I'll say, Joe, before we bring Chance on, I've had a chance to sort of think about this since we co-hosted the Hagmann Report together last night. This gas issue, and I don't think, Joe, that this is the primary motivating factor for the conflict, the current conflict between Israel and Iran, because we can track that back all the way to the revolution of 1979 and even before. But consider this, listeners, with the whole petrodollar scheme, if conflict in the region not only raises the price per barrel of oil past that $100 kiss point that the Saudi Arabians themselves admit is their break-even point per barrel of oil, and we're just about $28.27 and change off the mark. But if we see oil increase this summer to $150 or even $200 a barrel, then, Joe, what they've successfully accomplished is wrapping up a 100% more U.S. dollars in the petrodollar scheme globally. Why is that important? Because that takes 100% of the currency out there, and it prevents it from coming back to our shores. And so that means that we can continue to a degree to export our inflation, not just across the 50 states, but indeed across the entire globe. Again, I don't believe that's the primary motivating factor, Joe, but I certainly think that it's something our listeners need to consider and maybe do a little homework on.
Absolutely. And just one last piece here, and Chance is with us. The Inspector General's report, there is reports out there that are pieces of information that are being leaked, or people with knowledge of the impending DOJ Inspector General report confirm it's going to be very damning of the FBI's 7th floor during the Comey era, and that Comey might possibly face charges based on this report. And I don't know why the report hasn't been leaked yet. This is up at the Gateway Pundit. We'll talk about this more later. But John, if I don't hit on this again, remind me if you can about what is being speculated about what's in this highly anticipated Inspector General's report on the conduct of the FBI and DOJ. But with that, we have our sponsor with us, Chance from simplycleanfoods.net. Chance, it's great to have you back on the show, and we've been talking about the additions to your menu that you added just this week, and man, the blueberries and pineapples sound good. Can't wait to try those. But welcome back to the show.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be on. John just said something that is so important. After speaking with Pastor Langford, John said, you need to go down and fill up your gas tanks. Guys, this is very, very important what he said. Fill up your gas tanks. Also, fill up your propane tanks. If you have a barbecue outside, you can use that barbecue. If the power goes out, make sure that you have enough potable water on hand for your entire family. We recommend at least 200 gallons of having that on hand right now. But let's talk about this situation in the Middle East. Guys, this isn't doom porn. These are facts, right? We know for a fact that 20 missiles were launched by Iran into Israel, and Israel launched 70 back, right? We know that this is going to affect oil prices. It's going to affect travel restrictions. We also understand there's terrorist pockets right here in the United States. And so, expect some cyber attacks. And unfortunately, expect a media spin from the left, right? No matter what our president does, they're going to come against them with both barrels, right? So we need to understand that this is the real deal. And I believe that this is going to get much worse before it gets better. I saw today in a video Iranian officials actually burning the American flag. As a former soldier and as an American citizen, this upsets me. It really upsets me. But that being said, I actually have a question for both of you. There is a biblical correlation here when it comes to Israel and the Middle East and what's happening right now. Either one of you, Joe, John, please, reflect on that a little bit. What is the biblical correlation in the times that we're living in right this minute?
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things that the guests that we've been bringing on recently have talked about is to watch out for. One is this is the 70th year anniversary of Israel becoming a nation again after over 1900 years, 2000 years of not being a nation, fulfilling many Old and New Testament prophecies that talked about these times that we are going to be living in. We also know, from Daniel and other scriptures that, and from Psalms 82 and 83, that all this is really the forerunning of the convergence of a one world government. Now, whether that takes 1 year or 100 years to implement all this that we're seeing from the facelift in the Middle East with the Arab Spring and North Korea and the positioning of U.S., China, and Russia, all of this is, I guess, the chess piece is moving before the final conflict. And as again, when that happens, we don't know, but this is all very relevant to Bible prophecy, at least into what we're going to see in the future, I believe.
Indeed, it is. In fact, we're informed. Go ahead, Chance. Welcome back.
No.
Good to have you back on.
Thank you. No, I mean, this is civil war, right, in the Middle East. And there definitely is that biblical correlation, Joe, and thank you for that information. We also have to ask yourself, and John, this is for you, who profits, right, from these wars? And we're talking about all-out war. In my opinion, this is going to get much, much worse. Who's really profiting from this? And trust me, there are a group of people that profit from both sides of this war. John, go ahead.
In fact, that couldn't segue more beautifully, Chance. We see in Syria, Joe and I discussed this briefly last night on the evening show. This is the key word here is proxy, because much like Afghanistan in the 1980s in the Soviet era, or Vietnam in the late 60s through the early 70s, with China and Russia as well. This is a proxy scenario, and there's a distinct financial component, Chance, to this. There's a number of them. We've already talked about doubling and even perhaps tripling the number of petrodollars in play, which acts as a bulwark, albeit a temporary one, against hyperinflation and runaway costs here at home. But we'd be remiss if we didn't remind our listeners two things. Financial Times, that's amp.ft.com. Financial Times reported late last year that Gazprom, the nationalized number one energy company out of Russia, has a $30 billion, that's billion with a B, $30 billion energy agreement with Iran. And that was formalized in late 2017. And then we've got the Times of Israel, a little more recently from March 14th of this year. The headline, Iran signs $742 million oil deal with Russian company. Now, this is a different company, but just quickly, it says Dateline Tehran. Iran on Wednesday signed a $742 million or 600 million euro deal with Russian state-owned energy firm this is a tough one, Zarabnitsneft, to boost production at two fields in the country's west. So from Financial Times and Times of Israel, within the past handful of months, we see a distinct connection for oil as well as natural gas between Vladimir Putin's Russia and Iran. So when we see this skirmish, this missile exchange last night, early this morning in the region occur, it's not just a round one slugfest between the IDF and what they believe. The IDF went on record last night, Chance, stating that it was a faction of the Iranian Republican Guard that fired the missiles into the Golan region. However, there is a distinct direct financial component to the tune of almost $31 billion at stake between Russia and Iran. Lastly, I'll say this, and I'll hand it back to you, gentlemen. Russia and Iran have traditionally not been allied militarily or politically. You have a theocracy on one hand, you have a republic, formerly the Soviet Union, on the other. But when you start talking about $31 billion in energy, that's Russia's number one export. Now you're talking, again, circling back to the concept of a proxy conflict. So how quickly, gentlemen, Chance, I'll hand this back to you. How quickly can an alliance between Saudi Arabia and Israel, very strange bedfellows, versus Iran through Syria, how quickly could that explode, no pun intended, into a direct confrontation between Russia and the United States?
And that's exactly what we're talking about, John. Through Syria and other skirmishes, what we've been doing, and our politicians especially, is we've been poking the bear for a very long time. And as you know, in the wilderness, if you upset the bear too many times, you might just find yourself in a bloody heat. Okay, so let's
or somebody else will find you in one.
Yeah, that's right. Let's talk about that for a second. So you talked about energy, yes, but these missiles that are being lobbed, they have to be replaced. And former President John F. Kennedy talked about the military complex, right? There is profit in the hundreds of billions of dollars in the military complex, right? To replace these missiles, right? And there's a lot of plays at force here. War is profitable. On that note, I was on Stephen Menking's show yesterday. I was very honored to do an interview with him, and we talked about the stress and the depression and the anxiety that comes with dealing with all this news, right? And for the average person in today's technology, you just get barraged with negativity. And so, I understand, and you guys understand, we have to be solution based. And so what we talked about yesterday was intake, right? We talk about intake, we're talking about audio and visual. What you bring into your heart and you bring into your mind is important. And in order for you to digest this information, you need to have some type of a buffer. You need to have some type of a filter. But first and foremost, you need to have a relationship with the Lord. So our solutions were like, nutrition. Start out your day with a healthy meal, but also start out your day on your knees. Start your day out in the Word. Start your day with exercise, and surround yourself with positive people. I shared a story yesterday about a brother in Christ. His name is Byron. And we met with him recently, and he said something that I really took to heart. He goes, Chance, I had a heart attack. And after speaking with my doctor, I understood that most of this was caused by the stress of my life. And so I decided right then, if I'm going to be a father, I'm going to be a husband, and I'm going to be a grandfather, I've got to cut this out of my life. And the only way to do that is to surround myself with positive people. He says, Chance, in the business I'm in, it's not necessarily easy to do that because we deal with regular people, everyday people every day. But for my health and for the welfare of my family, if I get into a situation that's negative, I will excuse myself and walk away or try to turn it into a positive. So, folks, there are solutions to these problems. Stay in prayer, number one. Don't you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chance, just to take a moment and speak from the heart, Joe and I have been circling around this subject for weeks now. And just to mention quickly, Stephen Minking's interview with Chance can be found at ontheobjective.org, ontheobjective.org, or go to YouTube and type in On the Objective. Subscribe to the channel. It is On the Objective is like this little gem in our industry where Stephen Minking interviews all of the players in the new media, and it's really not well known yet. I think it's gonna explode this year. So that interview again can be found at On the Objective. But Chance, two things. First of all, this is a two-parter. Just to complement what you were saying a moment ago about the military-industrial complex, and then I'll mention something briefly about preparation, mindedness, spiritually in particular. This is from the New York Times, and this the headline is State Department approves $670 million arms deal with Saudi Arabia. This was written by Helene Cooper back on March 22nd of this year. The State Department said on Thursday that it had approved the sale of an estimated $670 million in anti-tank missiles to Saudi Arabia, just hours after Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met with Pentagon leaders to discuss the Saudi-led bombing campaign in Yemen. So we've got to remember we've got the Saudi Yemeni component here as well, but $670 million in U.S. arms headed to Saudi Arabia. But it gets better. JerusalemPost.com. This written by Herb Keenan from May 25th of 2017. U.S. increased military aid to Israel ahead of Trump visit. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that U.S. President Donald Trump had transferred funds to Israel prior to his visit and promised to help maintain the Jewish state's military edge. Now, for the sake of time, I won't unpack those articles any further, but that clearly demonstrates that we are, whether it's General Electric or Boeing or any of the massive contractors here in this country, there's enormous sums of money going to both Israel and Saudi Arabia. So point well taken there, Chance. And then as far as the second point regarding your friend and the stress factor, I cannot emphasize this enough to our listeners. Prayer, getting enough sleep at night, even simple lifestyle changes like, for example, I stopped off between the studio and home last night, topped off the tank because gas is going to go up the next few days, and it could go up significantly. But even Chance, that feeling that you have when you've got some extra food stores, you've got clean water, food for the pets, some extra ammo, even when it's small, even when it's just a little teeny tiny start point, you've got 2-3 buckets of food, and maybe you've got a little space in the closet dedicated to your quote unquote preps. There is something about the satisfaction that creates in a man or woman. It changes a listener from a possible victimization, feeling victimized by the news cycle, feeling like the world is spinning out of control, and it changes that from victimization to a weaponized approach, saying, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for my family's well-being and for my well-being, and with Christian charity, by beginning to do something about this. And that's the key. You've got to be in do mode, in go mode. If you just absorb all of this information every day. Joe stated this yesterday, Chance, and I'll hand it back to you, gentlemen. He said, if you've only got an hour of your day to either be in scripture or on the Hagmann Daily Show, then turn off the Hagmann Daily Show.
Or any show for that matter. Right. And that's exactly right, John. And one last thing I want to say, you mentioned the 24-hour news cycle. Nobody, at least with what we've been seeing going on, should be really moved, in a way, I guess, what you see in the 24-hour news cycle on the national and international level. Yes, we should be aware of it. Yes, we should, pay attention to it. But we should not let that affect our daily spiritual nor emotional or mental health. And it doesn't matter if the whole world is even crumbling around you. We need to have our faith rooted. We need to be sober-minded, and we need to be vigilant, not shaken by the things in this world. So it's so important that we get that aspect of things understood for believers here before moving forward, because how much control do you have over what happens in Israel or Iran or Syria or in Hawaii or any of these things that go on. Really none. The best and only thing you can do about it is be informed and understand what's going on. So we should not be shaken by these things.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm in complete agreement. With both of you. By the way, guys, that interview on the objective is actually on the Hagmann Report on the front page on the slider. So just click on that slider.
Is that from
and,
today?
Click on the show. You'll be blessed.
Is that the spiritual and physical nourishment, Chance? Yep, it's right at the top of the Hagmann Report. So awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely check that out. Well, Chance, we I don't know, how long have we been talking here? We've been on for almost 20-some minutes. Do you want to talk about the latest to simplycleanfoods.net, what you have added? And okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. We keep growing this line, and it's thanks to, your listeners and folks that support you. And guys, it's important, okay? Joe and John do this every day of the week, Monday through Friday. They put it out there. They do a lot of research to get you the information that you need to stay informed so that you don't have to listen to CNN or some of these other, left-wing channels. This information is important. So that's why we support them. We ask that you support them by going to simplycleanfoods.net. We have just added fresh, whole blueberries, freeze-dried from Chile. I have tried these blueberries. They're in manufacturing right now. They'll be here next week. Guys, if you like blueberries, you're going to love these. They are full of flavor, and they are absolutely delicious. You can eat them right out of the bag. Throw them in a blender, and make a smoothie, maybe with your favorite treats. Pineapple chunks are coming in. They'll be here next week as well. Green beans, #1 green beans, greenhouse grown. They're coming in next week, and cauliflower is coming in next week. So we have a full line now of fruits and vegetables. And I would suggest that you look at, go to the www.simplycleanfoods.net and look at the Alt Media Pack. Again, that's the Alt Media Pack. That is a special for our partners, like the Hagmann Daily Show, and that's already discounted, guys, like $500. But if you are listening to this show, you know that there is a promo code, Simply Clean, that you can save an additional 10%. I will not be able to do this forever because that is such a high discount. But we want to support these guys. Please go to www.simplycleanfoods.net. And the last thing, I know we're running out of time, is if you would like to help other people prepare and earn some extra income for your family, we are looking for distributors in all 50 states. If you're listening from overseas, we're looking for brokers overseas as well. So just reach out to us. You can reach us at 818-720-0759. I'll repeat that, 818-720-0759, or email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com, bugoutamerica@usa.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure and an honor.
Absolutely, and thanks for coming on. I just want to say, the previous food line, American Survival Wholesale, I had a huge container of the pineapple, and literally, my wife and I ate those right out of the can within a matter of a week, I think. And this is a huge can we're talking about. Those things were so delicious, and that's a great idea what you said, Chance. Use it for making milkshakes. Use it to put on top of your ice cream and whatnot. But it's amazing how much the fruit is so flavorful, and we thank you for doing that. And absolutely, if you want to be distributors, if you want to get involved and also take advantage of Chance's offer, contact him. Go to simplycleanfoods.net, and that is promo code SimplyClean, and the phone number is also right there on the website. Chance, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure again, guys. Have a wonderful day and be blessed.
All right. Again, Simply Clean, foods.net, promo code Simply Clean. If you want to support our show, do so through purchasing products and storable food through them. All right, John, we threw a whole bunch of stuff out there before we brought Chance on.
Indeed, we did. Just a quick
update.
update, Joe. We are going to have a debut guest this evening on the Hagmann Report. Just cover this briefly. Neil Monroe, very prolific writer and reporter for Daily Caller, will be joining us in the bottom of the first hour, so 7:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, for debut guest Neil Monroe. And then, of course, we have Keith Hansen from the Keith Hansen Show. And we're going to hear from one of our young millennial conservatives, Lexi Bess, who's been on the program before but has not joined us in recent months. So a good show shaping up for this evening. And Joe, where do you want to begin? I mean, we could run this show
right
out
here
for another 2 hours and not cover it all.
No, I know we could. Retired FBI agent says impending Inspector General report on the FBI's 7th floor under Comey is worse than expected. The Office of Inspector General is very close to completing a comprehensive report on how the FBI and DOJ handled Hillary Clinton's email investigation. And this is the IG Inspector General Horowitz. And this retired FBI agent and CNN analyst James Gagliano says sources are saying it is worse than expected, and also that Comey could face criminal charges from leaking classified information, as well as other things. So something to keep our eye out for. I was pretty sure that this report was supposed to already come out, but they're saying they're still wrapping it up. I don't know what's taking so long. They've been working on this for months. But is this all going to be part of the midterm 2018 strategy for President Trump and Republicans? Are we going to see this Inspector General report come out and be very damaging to the left? On top of that, the peace between South and North Korea, and the whole pushback against this illegal immigration party, which is the Democratic Party. I think what CNN said yesterday, as we said at the beginning of the show, the Democrats' 2018 advantage is nearly gone, according to a CNN poll. Again, we don't trust polls, but is the blue wave wiped out?
Well, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Okay, first of all, small victories, Joe, and this ties back into what Chance was just speaking about, and I think we can regard it as a God shot that Chance came on with us here today, and with no pre-show prep or offline discussions whatsoever. His advice was to take a breath, take things one step at a time. The news cycles are coming in hard and heavy. In as much, Joe, as while you and I were getting ready to go live last night, this whole Israel-Iran thing broke literally 2-3 minutes before the cameras and mics went hot. So we need to focus on, like you said, Joe, what we can do personally in our own lives to mitigate psychologically and spiritually the things that we are seeing in the world around us. And so with this IG report, we need to see some heads roll this year. I think two just primary candidates for the striped pajamas at this point would be James Comey regarding the entire Mueller investigation, but also a former Attorney General for the state of New York, Schneiderman. I see, particularly in the case of Schneiderman, I don't see how he's going to dodge these on-the-record allegations. I mean, they've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. The plaintiffs, the victims have come forward and gone on the record.
He's not going to get charged, and if he does get charged, he's not going to get convicted. All you have is he said, she said stuff, and what makes it even worse is that these women never even came forward after this happened. We're talking about allegations from years ago, and it's obviously ridiculous, the conduct, especially when you see the hypocrisy of this guy being one of the proponents of women's rights and the Me Too movement, being so abusive towards women. But yes, it's criminal behavior, but can they prove criminal behavior beyond just the words of another? And this brings us to an interesting point. I heard Michael Savage talking about this a little bit yesterday. I also heard Lionel on the fourth hour of Alex Jones last night, and he said, he made a great point. Many people are putting this Schneiderman thing as it's some sort of big victory for the anti-pedophilia, anti-child trafficking, basically confusing the allegations. And Lionel made the point that this is not proof of any of those things, like the child trafficking, the pedophilia, which goes back to Liz's point from last week, where she said that this Me Too movement is basically a cover for that kind of behavior. And what they're doing here is focusing on somebody who treats women badly, or and this wasn't even sexual assault claims that were made. This was just straight out abuse. But it's obviously important that this guy was removed from his post. I just don't think, as much as he does deserve it, that he's going to see any kind of legal repercussions for his conduct in all this.
Joe, you make an interesting point. He probably will skate based on the. It's unfortunate, but when victims come forward ex post facto, especially when it's in the case of the one victim, it was allegations dating back to 2015. That's three years. It was New Year's Eve, so that's 3 years and 5 months ago. That is a significant period of time to sit on this type of information. We know that just basic criminal procedural indicates that she would have needed to go to law enforcement the following day. They take pictures of any bruises or other notable indications of violence, etc. So the Schneiderman guy, he might skate. It's very possible. And Joe, it's interesting to see how the media handles all of this. We see this massive, enormous division, and yet at the same time, as much as I hate to give credit to CNN for anything, but they have going all the way back to Jake Tapper's remarks a couple of weeks ago. It seems like maybe CNN is reading their email and maybe trying to pull it together a little bit, after, for example, their New Year's fiasco this past year of having their reporters on camera with the big marijuana celebrations, etc. But real quick, this from money.cnn.com. Now, I pulled this as part of the show prep for today, but we also received a text from our friend Greg Jackson, who was also with Salem Radio. That's the third largest network in the country. Christian owned and operated, but certainly a lot of questions, regarding the Salem network as a whole. This again from CNN. Salem executives pressured radio hosts to cover Trump more positively. Emails show. I'll just give listeners the first piece of this, Joe, and hand it back to you.
CNN, money.cnn.com?
Yeah, money.cnn.com.
Who's the author on that?
This is from Hadas Gold and Oliver Darcy. And I'm sending you the link right now, Joe.
I have a report. The only reason I asked that is because I talked to you about a report from April 27th. This was by Brian Stelter, where he says mass firing at conservative site Red State. But when you read the first paragraph, Salem Media, owner of the influential conservative outlet Red State, froze the site on Friday and dismissed many of its writers. So I think this is the same exact story when we thought this was two different stories. But yeah, go ahead and continue.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's a follow-up to that story. Now, this is posted yesterday at 5:44 Eastern in the afternoon. It says executives at Salem Media Group, a conservative media company that syndicates some of the country's most recognized talk radio hosts and operates a batch of popular commentary websites, pressured some of their radio talent to cover Donald Trump more favorably during the 2016 presidential campaign. Emails obtained by CNN Money show. And it goes on to discuss some of the talk show hosts and what they were asked to do regarding their show content. And this ties interestingly back into, again, Greg Jackson's remarks over the last several years on Hagmann Report and other platforms that he passed on a big show. It was going to be a nationally syndicated show with Salem back in the 2008 Mitt Romney era, because Greg disagreed with the way that Salem wanted to cover Mitt Romney in his first bid for the presidency. So we have, by way of even our personal contacts through the Hagmann Report, we have indication, Joe, that Salem has had their fingerprints on certain show hosts' political favorability whether it be with Mitt Romney or with the Never Trump camp, and this again stretching back all the way to 2008. I would also add, just incidentally, that Dennis Prager is one of the top tier talk show hosts with Salem, and I personally enjoy Dennis Prager very much. And I would recommend to our listeners to find Prager University on YouTube and subscribe to that channel. They're great little 4 to 6 minute pieces that really lay down the foundations for conservatism.
Yeah, and interestingly, we see this on the left so much, but we got to talk about it when we do see it on the right. And Tommy Robinson from the UK, I got to find this tweet I saw earlier, but he's fighting in court the fact that facts or the truth is considered hate speech in the UK, and that's happening here in America too. But we see the bias of the media is so heavily geared toward the liberal mindset, the socialist progressive mindset. And we also talk about also the unification of their message, the left ideology and their message. But on the right, we seem to be divided along, pro-Trump or never Trump lines. And one thing that I find very frustrating about this story is it's one thing to have writers who are just hammering the president. But if you have somebody who is a pro-Trump person voicing their opinions about policy, domestic or foreign policy of the president, because it doesn't line up with their personal views or constitutional views, there is room for criticism. I don't think there's room for this all or nothing mindset, especially if it's the truth and facts that we're going after. And to see people, and I don't know these specific cases, I don't know the details of these writers who were removed, but I don't think being insufficiently partisan is grounds for termination as far as being a journalist. But to each their own, I guess. But it's unfortunate to see that you have these fights going on inside the alternative and conservative medias.
Indeed, it is. And Joe, I'm pulling up a piece right now. I want to discuss this with you briefly. An unusual number of GOP incumbents retiring in the fall of this year. And this, of course, ties back into the whole never Trumper camp. And we need to be mindful, Joe, that just a year and a half ago, not long ago at all, there was a significant faction of establishment Republicans who were never Trumpers. And you can also add a faction of the Libertarian Party that were never Trumpers as well. And these people have not just disappeared. They've not just crawled in their holes and gone away. They are, many of them, active in government everywhere from Capitol Hill to the White House to the State Department. So the never Trump camp is still there and vibrant to whatever degree. Joe, again, an unusual number of Republican legislators retiring this year.
Yeah, and I just when you brought that up, I did a quick search on this. There is a wave of Republicans leaving Congress, and there has been speculation as to the reasons or motivations behind this big push of Republicans leaving, and some of that even speculation got into the realm of, well, they're afraid of assassinations. I saw that on one internet forum, but I think it's a combination of things. I think, one, you have what we just talked about, this tremendous divide in the political conservative movement between the pro-Trumps and never-Trumpers, and you have all these politicians, I think, who have seen the landscape and the environment of the politics change so drastically just in the last 4 years that maybe people are sick of it. I know some are moving on to other posts, some are running for governors of their states or other positions, but others are just retiring or quitting. And if you remember, even Paul Ryan, there were reports that Paul Ryan was not going to seek re-election that came out, maybe at the beginning of the year, that he dismissed vehemently, said, oh, that's all bogus, that's not true. Come to find out, just a few months later, he announced, yes, I'm not going to be running for re-election. With the shooting that we saw at the softball field there last spring, where Steve Scalise was shot, I think this whole toxic political environment definitely adds to people's willingness to leave, and also the private sector. When you see stories like this on Drudge Report, Cohen, touting access to president, convinced companies to pay millions. And you read through this report, they try to say that, Cohen is basically committing crimes here because of the access he has. But if you go through the report, it details that, this is not an illegal thing, or this is not even a rare thing, people using their influence in the private industry through legitimate business practices for potential clients. And even one of the reporters say it's an entrepreneur always understands their opportunities, and Michael has always been an entrepreneur. They're trying to make something out of nothing. But in this gotcha political environment, which we see is disproportionately unfavorable to Republicans, where these fake scandals, fake political witch hunts, the Me Too movement, all this stuff that, and this hatred towards the right from a vast majority of our country, or not a vast majority, I should say, about half. We see that people want for the money they make, maybe they think it's not worth it, that they can do much better in other areas without the attention and the hyper partisan rhetoric and vitriol that comes with being in politics. So I'm sure there's a whole host of reasons. I don't think.
Well, it could cost you your house. I mean, look at Michael Caputo's remarks early last week. Joe, I want to leave it with you, but I'll just add this quickly because it complements what you're saying. This from ballotpedia.org. As we look at the 2018 midterms, there are 0 Democrat incumbents in the Senate that are retiring. However, there are 3 Republicans, Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, and Orrin Hatch. Now, the Orrin Hatch one makes sense because he's getting really up there in the years. When we look at the House, this as of April 27, 2018, there are 53 representatives who will not seek re-election to their U.S. House districts. But by party breakdown, Joe, this is significant. 17 Democratic members of the U.S. House will not seek re-election. 36 members of the 36 Republican members of the U.S. House will not seek re-election. So we're talking about more than double the number of GOP incumbents who are, for whatever reason, choosing not to seek re-election.
Yeah, and when you get, I want to talk about this. This is up on Hagmann Report. We need. When we see the left just completely abandoning the Constitution, the rule of law, the American people, and the citizens of this country, to favor transvestites or transgenders or illegal immigrants, people, the regular working class American people, whether they're Democratic or Republican, don't have time, could care less, only want to see more money in their pockets, only want their families to have and friends to have better opportunities. But when we see things like this, Phil Murray, in New Jersey, signs bill to let unauthorized immigrants get college financial aid. A New Jersey college student's immigration status will no longer play a factor into whether that student is eligible for certain in-state financial aid. This is done by now Governor Phil Murphy, a Democrat who took the measure a step further when he signed the bill into law Wednesday that would let some of those students be eligible for financial aid, something Chris Christie refused to do. But when we see this Democratic Party abandoning the American citizens, or any community in America really that is working, that is paying their bills, paying their taxes, they've abandoned those people. So when you see polls like this, like we said with CNN, Democrats' advantage is nearly gone. It's no wonder the Democratic advantage is nearly gone. Look at what President Trump has been able to accomplish in the face of all the opposition from the political elite, from Hollywood and the media establishment, from these rabid anti-Christian, anti-American, Antifa and other Rosie O'Donnell types. And we have some news on her too. But the American people, for the vast majority, not represented by the news media by any stretch of the imagination, wants to get as far away from those radical and insane ideas of the hyper-progressive left as they can. And that's going to translate into, if things continue the way they are right now, a massive Republican majority in the House and Senate moving forward.
Joe, it's staggering. So we've got this guy in New Jersey who wants to, let's just call it what it is. He wants to subsidize illegals going to college. Well, that's great. That really touches my heart. This from Money magazine. Excuse me. A shocking number of Americans now owe at least $50,000 in student debt, and many aren't paying it down. This from Caitlin Mulher, again, writing from Money Magazine back on February 22nd, 2018. It says, many of the millions of student loan borrowers, this is crucial, listeners, many of the millions of student loan borrowers with unusually high balances aren't paying back their debts, a new analysis from researchers with the Brookings Institution shows. Of the more than 40 million Americans who have student debt, 5.9 million, about 14% of the total group, owe more than $50,000. That's nearly triple the percentage who owed that amount in 2000, and it's a share that's continuing to grow. Now, you skip down in this article a little bit, get a load of this. Even a small share of the total pool, let me skip forward. The total outstanding student loan debt liability in the United States as of February 22nd of this year, Joe, this again, according to Money Magazine, is $1.4 trillion.
That's student loan debt?
$1.4 trillion in student loan debt in the United States of America as of late February 2018. $1.4 trillion. We can't put our own kids through college, and we could do an entire show on arguing is that even a wise idea anymore? It's basically commie indoctrination. But provided you want to send your child, your kid to college, you're looking at a $1.4 trillion brick wall right in your face. And this guy from New Jersey wants to encourage people from around the globe to break our federal and state laws, run the border, and come on over here for a quote unquote free education. Joe, I've never met a liberal that doesn't like taxes and my money.
Ain't that the truth? In this article, one of the other city council members wrote this, as the assemblyman says that treating non-citizens better than citizens, I think, is fundamentally wrong. And that just sums it up perfectly. And I've talked about my own student loan issues where my wages have been garnished for over the last year, and I have not gotten a tax return in over 4 years because they keep taking them. And what's really crazy is I've probably paid it off twice now, but they continue to tack on interest, and it's insane. But here, no relief for people. We talked about the homeless numbers just in California yesterday, the 130,000+, and all across the country. We talk about the huge problems we have with our welfare dependency state and the whole atmosphere that creates over the decades and generations, and how we detailed a report yesterday that talked about the welfare state before and after, and how before we had welfare, we had charity, where people on the individual level, whether through neighborhoods or churches, would take care of those around them. But we just have this massive system of dependency. And the left, John, as you said, the only thing that they do efficiently is to steal money from other people and redistribute it to those who refuse to earn it or to do anything positive in society. And don't take what I'm saying the wrong way. Obviously, there are people there who have medical issues, who have other issues that they are unable to function properly. I'm not talking about those kind of people. I'm not talking about the kind of people who've fallen on hard times and need assistance. I'm talking about the generational, living in the mindset from cradle to grave that the government's going to take care of everything, from your food to your shelter, and that you just have to exist off the taxpayer's dime. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And it is insane to see how far gone we have come from what made this country great. The individual, the working man going out there, getting a job, providing for their family. Instead, we're creating these systems of dependency where that only drains the resources from our communities and our ability to help other people. And then taking it a step further, you're inviting millions, hundreds of thousands, and millions of illegal immigrants here and demanding that taxpayers subsidize their college education. Screw that.
Yeah, as well as their groceries, their HUD housing supplements, and their medications, their visits to the doctor. The list goes on and on and on. Joe, I recently migrated out of a completely failed region of this country, which is the greater Los Angeles County, Southern California basin, where in the right neighborhoods, and you see this regularly, you see someone who has immigrated typically illegally from another country, and I can't tell you the number of times I witnessed this firsthand. They pull up to a grocery store in a Mercedes or a BMW, and they have no problem whatsoever walking into that establishment and whipping out their EBT or their federally subsidized SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program benefit card, and they take care of their living expenses that way. Meanwhile, someone such as yourself has wages being garnished due to outstanding student loan debt and the compounding interest thereof. I'll make this my final comment for today. Our listeners would be encouraged, I think, to note the landslide of editorials coming out of California, both from Los Angeles as well as the San Francisco Bay Area, that indicate that there are a lot of people. There were over 100,000 people who migrated out of California last year because they look around in their day-to-day lives and they simply see that their government, their choices in government, from Governor Brown on down and all the way back through the Obama administrations, are not serving their neighborhood, their community. They look around and they can see these things. So there's a fulcrum here, and there's a tilt point, Joe, where these anti-American, I would go as far as to say America-hating DNC positions, and I think that illegal immigration is the spark on the fuse here, where a lot of just regular Americans who basically, you know what they want? Keep us out of war and let me keep my money. It's really that simple. And yet what we see from the DNC is this pounding on the table, and it's all about this global benevolence. And guess what, Joe? We can't afford that global benevolence. Last time I checked, we owe the globe $20 trillion.
It's just it's mind blowing, where we've been and where we are today, and obviously going on the not learning from our mistakes. Instead, we see these people doubling and tripling down on some of the worst mistakes and laws and decisions that have ever been made in this country, and it's so frustrating. But Mark Dice did a video today, just real quick here, on the social justice warriors and their rampant attacks on Mother's Day, and we see this every time a holiday comes around: Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, where these toxic persons are talking about inclusivity and what about the families with two dads, and it's insanity. And anybody who puts any stock into these evil, insane people's demands needs to be rooted out with the rest of them. But this all, what we just got done talking about, John, these economic roles all play a role in what we see the behavior of these people today. It's the I guess the toxic environment of the political correctness, and everybody is equal, and everybody should be allowed to be citizens. If America is such a bad country, as the left always says, why are so many people breaking the law to get here? I mean, we could talk about this for hours. We only have about a minute left, but it is so frustrating to watch our country be destroyed from the inside out, and especially when our founding fathers have given us a remedy to fix it, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else. We need to organize and create a plan of action, because we're only talking about 5 to 10,000 people who control everything in this country. How quickly, with 100,000 dedicated Americans, how long would it take to fix these problems? That's what we really need to be working on, is the solutions to the problems, more so than just pointing them out. There's a place for pointing them out and exposing them, absolutely. But the real work begins when we start to work on these solutions and work on fixing these problems. That's where the focus of our attention needs to be. But John, we're at the end of the show. It was a great show. Chance from simplycleanfoods.net joined us again. If you can support us, do so through simplycleanfoods.net, promo code simplyclean. Check out the latest that they have there from their new blueberries, cauliflower, and pineapples. Again, those pineapples are delicious. Just go to simplycleanfoods.net and order one bag of those things and send us your feedback on how good they are. I can't even explain it in words how flavorful they are. But John, great show. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Hagmann Daily Show is brought to you by the Hagmann Report. Tune in to the Hagmann Report weekdays, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to HagmannReport.com. That's HagmannReport.com.